Sure, the lesson may seem obvious now, but at the time it wasn't, and it turned out to be a real integral part of my development as a professional. The first year I was selling real estate, I was on my way home one afternoon and I stopped off to look at a fixer. While there, a father and daughter showed up, and I let them in to poke around while I did the same. We wound up hitting it off, and they asked me to help them purchase the place. So after we got their offer accepted, their loan officer called and said that I had overestimated some of the financing costs that we had looped in, and suggested that we cancel the agreement and start over so they could reduce their purchase price, which was $122,000. This was a while ago. And I went to the buyer and I said, look, I made a mistake. I'm not sure how I did this, but I did. And I had you offer a bit too much. As a result, if you cancel, there's a chance we won't get a new offer accepted because it was HUD, and HUD wasn't always real straightforward to deal with. They agreed that it wasn't worth it, and the mistake was about $1,500, and they felt it wasn't enough to jeopardize their purchase. Well, over the next few days, their loan officer got increasingly aggressive with me, demanding that I promise to write them a check for $1,500 at closing to reimburse them for my mistake. Now, I reminded her that in Oregon, an agent can't simply write a rebate check to a client. That's not legal, and I went back to them and told them, hey, I again made a mistake. I don't know how, but I apologize. I'll figure something out. Now, as the loan officer got more aggressive, she began to really raise the stakes on me. The father and daughter, my client, were from Croatia. The loan officer was also from Croatia, and she claimed that I had specifically overcharged them as a way to take advantage of them because I assumed they were not intelligent because they weren't native to the country. I reminded her there was no benefit to me of them paying the extra money and just tried to dismiss it at that. But she became increasingly angry and began making threats that there were plenty of people back in Croatia who would not be happy with my behavior. Now, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do with that information. I wasn't really doing any business in Croatia at the time or since then, or if this was some threat that some, gang was going to show up. I don't know. But anyway, she was angry. Buyers called me a couple days after that and asked me, is our loan officer giving you any trouble? And I said, no. We're both concerned. We want to make sure that you're well represented, and we just want to figure out how to make up for this. Again, I'm really sorry. We'll get it figured out. About a day later, I was on the phone with the loan officer's assistant, who said to me, hey, Dan, my apologies. The financing costs I gave you were a little bit too high. Again, my apologies for the mistake. So as it turns out, I hadn't made a mistake. The loan officer's assistant had given me numbers that were a little bit out of alignment with where they should be, but the loan officer had gone on the attack on me. Now, I was a first-year agent. In fact, this was one of my first sales that I would have made. The buyers wound up backing out for condition reasons on the property. But in any event, the buyers eventually fired the loan officer, and they had known each other for years. And in fact, their families back in Croatia still knew each other at that time. But they fired her, and they stayed with an agent that they knew was new to the industry. And they told me, they said, Dan, you called us right away and said, I made a mistake. I don't know the solution yet, but I'll figure something out. They said, on the other hand, she's been bad-mouthing you to us, our church here in the States, and yes, to the church back in Croatia. They've been telling them what a bad guy Dan Walters is. And they said, we just feel like she's not doing the right thing. You have tried to do the right thing. We understand now it wasn't even your mistake, but you took ownership of it. It was important in my first year to go through this because I got a chance to see what it looks like when you don't take responsibility versus what it looks like when you do. And that if you make one and you come forward right away and say, look, there was a problem, I'm responsible for it, I'll figure it out, people have patience for that. What they don't have a lot of patience for is trying to hide it or shift the blame onto someone else. I'd like to think I haven't made too many mistakes in my career, but I've made some. And I've always found that when I go to the people, this isn't just at work, this is outside of work. If I come in and say, I made a mistake, here's what it is, I'll figure it out, people are pretty patient and understanding. But trying to avoid it never works, and it's terrible for your reputation. This all being said, I don't know if the church back in Croatia ever forgave me for the mistake it turns out I didn't make.